Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I rewatched Doctor Strange from 2016, and I absolutely adore this movie. I have so much to say about it. But before we get into it, if you guys are new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you don't miss any time I upload a video or I go live. But without wasting more time, let's get into it. So yeah, Doctor Strange. I've been waiting to rewatch this one. This was one of my most anticipated movies for rewatch in the MCU, just because I haven't seen this movie in a long time. I haven't seen it, I think, since like 2018, and I was just really excited to watch it again. It's one of my favorite MCU solo movies, and I think it's for good reason. It still holds up in my opinion. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, but primarily I want to talk about Doctor Strange's character. And I know there's a lot of criticisms towards Doctor Strange's character, but I personally really do like him. There's a few things about his character and some criticisms that I understand, as well as some of them that I don't understand, honestly. So the biggest one that I do understand is that his character is a lot like Tony Stark, and a lot of people are just like, he's Tony Stark, but instead of basically being super smart when it comes to tech, he's super smart when it comes to the mystic arts. And I obviously love the mystic arts in the MCU. You guys know me. I love Doctor Strange. I love Wanda. I love the whole like dark hold thing, dark magic. I love all of that kind of stuff. But I don't think that's really a valid argument to not really like Doctor Strange per se, because he's too much like Tony Stark. But one thing that I don't really understand is people are saying, oh, he doesn't have an arc throughout the movie. And he still technically does, because he put back the Eye of Agamotto by the end of the movie. In the beginning of the movie, obviously, he was arrogant, then he got into the car accident, and then he wasn't arrogant. That's why they let him into the school thing. I forgot what it's called, I'm gonna be honest, but they let him into the school thing. He learned magic. Obviously, he was arrogant by taking the Eye of Agamotto, and then he returned it by the end of the movie. So there was a full arc. Obviously, Wong said you can take it back. We need a Sorcerer Supreme. You can wield it. Obviously, he doesn't wield it by the end of this movie. He wields it in the final battle, but he puts it back in place because he realizes that he shouldn't keep it. I think that's personally part of his arc, and I don't think I'm wrong here. I'm going to be honest. Also, I don't understand why Mordo thought that using the time stone, or not the time stone, but manipulating time was bad by the end of the movie, because obviously we know Mordo was in most of this movie. I love Mordo so much, by the way. He's one of my favorite Doctor Strange characters. I think he's awesome. I can't wait to see him back in the future of the MCU, because by the end of the movie, in the post-credit scene, remember, he takes away the power from the guy whose back was paralyzed, and he's like, there's too many sorcerers. So I obviously, he has to fight Doctor Strange eventually. That would be super cool to see. I don't know when exactly they're going to do that, because this next movie already seems like it's going to be pretty packed with all of this multiverse stuff going on. But nevertheless, I do think that Mordo's reasoning was kind of weird towards the end of the movie here, because he was like, okay, why did you even take the time stone? Why are you using it? Like, this is the wrong way to fix everything. But that's really the only way they could have fixed it, or else Caecilius would have won. Dormammu wouldn't have made that bargain with Doctor Strange. So the whole argument really just doesn't make sense to me. But I also like Mordo's character in general, other than the one part at the end that just really doesn't make sense to me. But the biggest, weakest aspect of this movie, as someone who loves this movie, is the villain. I will say that Dormammu was super dope. I love Dormammu's style, the CGI for him. I love the creativity behind the whole loop thing where Doctor Strange keeps bothering Dormammu. That's all super sick to me. But Caecilius is just too generic. I think that's an issue with a lot of the MCU villains. Their whole plot device is just super generic. He's like, okay, I want to get rid of all of these sorcerers. I want to just live eternally, all that kind of stuff. Basically do what the Ancient One is doing, but without trying to wield the dark magic for myself and let everyone live eternity, I guess. I don't really understand his motive too much, and that's an issue when it comes to a villain. But at the same time, his villain, I thought the villain himself was pretty cool. I thought Mads Mikkelsen was awesome playing Caecilius. I think the acting is great. I feel like they just didn't take advantage of it, and that's a problem in a lot of Marvel solo movies. I think especially in the first solo movies, just because you really need to develop the hero mainly, but at the same time you need some sort of antagonist. I also know that me talking about this might get people to hate me or something like that, but I thought the Ancient One was actually pretty cool. I don't think it's cool that they whitewashed her, okay? I'm not saying that. I definitely think they should have not casted a white person and just whitewashed the role completely, whitewashed the whole history of the mystic arts. I don't think they should have done that. But for the character that we got, she was still a fairly cool character. The end, where it's basically the astral form of Doctor Strange and the Ancient One basically talking to each other, and them basically saying to each other that, okay, this is where my time ends. That's what the Ancient One says. I've never been able to see past this point. But when she talks about Doctor Strange, she's like, I see an infinite amount of possibilities for you. I see you helping millions of people. I see you doing great things, and I see you being the next great being. And that really got me emotional emotional, not because I like love the Ancient One's character, but it really sets up Doctor Strange's future in such a small amount of time, just one conversation. Because before this, Doctor Strange literally said, he was like, I can't defeat Dormammu myself, I can't do this alone. But then he obviously gets the confidence and he goes to do it, especially like even after the Ancient One dies and he's talking to the girl. Oh, I forgot her name. Her first name is Rachel, I forgot her last name, but yeah, the girl, the love interest in this movie, obviously. Like, and then he like gets to like kisses her and stuff like that, and then he just goes off into battle. Like, it's kind of actually kind of sentimental. Like, it's not super cheesy, and it makes sense for Doctor Strange's character in this movie, and that's kind of what I like. I like that it's slightly emotional. It utilizes the Ancient One's character, and it kind of ties together everything in the first and second act of this movie, and leads into the third act really, really well, in my opinion. I think that the first act is really perfect in the way of showing that, okay, this Doctor Strange is a man who's arrogant. He only does stuff for his own good. All of these small things in the first act lead to Doctor Strange's, I guess, path of redemption in the second act. But by the middle of the second act, he's become arrogant once again. He wants to learn more things. Obviously, learning isn't necessarily a bad thing, but then obviously there's the rules set by Wong, the librarian, and there's just all these other rules of time and stuff like that he doesn't really find out, because like he mentions in the movie a lot, they should put warnings before all of the spells. But nevertheless, I think that the second act does a great job of setting up this massive final act, which I'm gonna be honest, I think it was split up a little bit too much. That's another one of my small issues of this movie, is that the final act seems to be split into 3 acts in itself, if that makes sense. So the first part is where after Doctor Strange fights Caecilius for the first time, he leaves one of Caecilius's goons in like the desert or something like that, and he meets up with Mordo and the Ancient One, and he starts to question the Ancient One's backstory, all that kind of stuff, inside of the New York Sanctum. After that moment, him and Mordo run out because he used the Eye of Agamotto, and then they run out, and then we have the whole like Inception sequence where they're like running across buildings and all that kind of stuff. But then it leads to the Ancient One and basically Caecilius fighting in this little arena thing. Caecilius stabs the Ancient One, she goes through a portal, and then Doctor Strange and Mordo take her to the hospital, and that's kind of where the second part of the final act starts. And then we have the whole hospital sequence, like I mentioned before. They're all his astral form and the Ancient One's astral form are talking to each other, and then after that is where it feels like it really starts. Like the final act really, really ramps up. Once the Ancient One is gone, obviously they go to the Hong Kong Sanctum, and it's already burnt down, like it's already broken. Doctor Strange is basically like at Caecilius's mercy. He finds out like what he can do. He comes up with the idea of bargaining with Dormammu, goes up to Dormammu, and this is probably one of my favorite parts of the movie. It's just Doctor Strange being an arrogant guy, but it actually works this time. It works to his favor when annoying Dormammu, and then he comes back, everything is fixed, and then there's not really a crazy like final battle, but all those things combined really bring together a final act for me. So I like it. At the same time, it is kind of weird for me that it feels like it's split up into 3 parts. That's the weird part. But I think all 3 of these parts combined really makes a great act. And that's kind of my thoughts on the movie. I think that the movie overall is just awesome. My 2 biggest issues. Number 1 is the villain. I think the villain is like probably one of the like most mediocre villains in the entire MCU. And my second issue is like slightly the pacing in the final act. Again, it just feels like it's split into 3 different parts within the final act. At the end of the day, all 3 of them together are really cool, but I don't know why they feel also divided. And again, that last thing is a nitpick, but the villain thing, I think most people can agree on. It's just the most mediocre villain. That's what drags this movie down the most. Nevertheless, this is one of my favorite solo movies in the entirety of the MCU, just because I love the lore of the mystic arts. I love Doctor Strange. I love Benedict Cumberbatch, and I also love Wong's character, and the comedy in this movie is actually pretty good. It doesn't feel forced like a lot of Marvel movies. I will say the comedy actually made me laugh a couple times, and I actually really enjoyed this one. Let me know what you guys think of Doctor Strange in the comments down below. The next episode in MCU Rewatch is actually going to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and then after that, Spider-Man Homecoming. So hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss any of those future episodes of MCU Rewatch. That's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.